Once upon a time, in the small community of Grants Pass, Oregon, there was a woman named Bristol. Bristol was a single mum with 3 young children, Sarah, Blake, and Lily. She had worked very hard to afford a nice home with a nice backyard for her children to safely play in. This is no small achievement, since she lived in Oregon, where housing prices are very high. They didn't have much, but Bristol and her little family were happy and proud of their little home. Early one morning, little Blake woke Bristol in quite a panic. "Mummy, who are those people in our backyard?" Alarmed, Bristol got up and went to the sliding glass door and was gobsmacked by the sight of 3 large tents surrounded by what looked like piles of random litter and debris. "What are you people doing in my yard?" Bristol yelled out of the window. A wrinkled-faced older woman stood up from behind one of the tents, looking as if she was pulling up her pants, and yelled back, "We have nowhere else to go. It's not our fault that we're in this condition. And by the way, could you spare some toilet paper and a couple of cigarettes?" Bristol just stood there in shock and outrage, having a hard time finding the words for the audacity of what she was seeing. Who were these people? Where did they come from? And why my backyard? She thought. Not really sure how safe these intruders were, she quickly grabbed the phone and called the police. "I have people camping in my backyard. They were not invited, and they are making a mess. I feel very unsafe," she reported to the dispatch. "Are they there by choice, ma'am?" the dispatch replied. What kind of question was this, Bristol thought. How should I know? These people are on the property I pay for. It's called my backyard. I need someone to remove them right now. She could feel her chest tighten with frustration at such a bizarre question. After a brief pause, the dispatch replied, "We will send someone out right away, ma'am." Bristol and the kids quickly locked the doors to the backyard, got dressed, and went into the front yard to wait for the police to arrive. As they walked off the front porch, little Blake yelled to his sisters, "Hey, where's my bike? I left it right here on the porch last night and now it's missing." But Lily and Sarah had no idea. They were quickly distracted by the shocking discovery that the gate to their backyard was broken to bits and was lying on the front lawn. In addition, there was graffiti all over their fence, including swastikas and pictures of cartoon pigs wearing what looked like police uniforms. Outrage was rising in Bristol's heart as she recalled how hard she worked to afford and build that fence. She remembered the sense of accomplishment she had after learning to build it all by herself with a little help from the local home improvement store. How was she going to afford to replace this? A couple of neighbours began to gather on the sidewalk to look at the spectacle. Bristol overheard one of the neighbours whisper to the other, "I didn't know she was a Nazi, but it kind of makes sense now, don't you think?" The other replied with a knowing nod of concern. "There are a bunch of homeless people camping in my backyard. They must have broken down and vandalised my fence in the middle of the night or something," Bristol exclaimed. One of the neighbours, Mr. Tussing, replied, "Whoa now, Bristol. Can you prove they did this? After all, you didn't actually witness them breaking in, did you?" Not sure which to be more offended by, the question or the scare quotes Tussing used when he enunciated breaking in, she just stared at him, clenching her jaw, and moved young Lily behind her to assure her safety. "I have an idea," said Mrs. Tussing with a smile. "Valerie and I will go and make a bunch of sandwiches, and we'll come and meet our new neighbours just to make them feel welcome." "Well, now that's a very kind idea. That's what good Christian neighbours ought to do," replied Valerie, who was the neighbour from across the street. "Wait! What are you talking about?" Bristol exclaimed. "This is my backyard. These are intruders. They are making a mess where my children play. You can't just come over and make them comfortable and treat them like they live here." Playfully, Mr. Tussing raises his hands as if he is being robbed and says, "Easy there, neighbour. No need to start calling people names. It is dehumanizing. What if they simply have nowhere else to go? How will you ever know if we don't reach out to them and try to understand their situation? I'm not interested in understanding them. I don't care why they chose my backyard to break into. I just want them out, and I don't want my actual neighbours to treat them as if they are one of us, she replied. For Bristol, it felt as if she had been thrust into some kind of Twilight Zone movie where the main character wakes up and everything around looked the same, but somehow they'd been moved into another universe. Had her neighbours always thought like this? Why weren't they defending her? And if not for her sake, then at least for her children. Why, just last week, little Blake helped mow Mr. Tussing's lawn, and Valerie came and watched Lily's soccer game. What was happening? Finally, a police car arrived, and Bristol felt this huge wave of relief roll over her at the sight. The side of the very sharp-looking patrol car read, "Protect and Serve." Now we will get somewhere, Bristol thought. A middle-aged officer with a very kind face stepped out of his car. "Ma'am, my name is Officer Baker. Are you the occupant of this home?" "Yes, I live here. It's my house," Bristol replied. "Well, what seems to be the problem?" asked Officer Baker. She informed the officer of all the morning events. "That sounds pretty frustrating, ma'am. May we go into the backyard and have a look?" Just as they were about to enter into the back, where the gate used to be, Bristol and the officer heard little Blake yell out, "Hey, that's my bike, I think." As they turned, they saw a man in his mid-40s wearing a flat-brimmed baseball cap, a wife-beater tank top, a thick brass chain necklace, cargo shorts that looked too big because they hung so far below his waist that his underwear was showing, and high-top sneakers, riding on a bicycle that looked like it had a fresh coat of spray paint, the colour of which matched the new graffiti on Bristol's fence. Carrying a six-pack of beer and smoking a cigarette, he yelled out, "Hey, look out! I've got to get to my tent." Shocked, but almost instinctively, both Bristol and the officer simply moved to let the man through. Officer Baker couldn't help but be impressed at the park-like design of the backyard. If it weren't for the newly created mess that was nothing short of a small disaster, this would be an amazing place for a family to play and enjoy. There was a swing set with a slide, but unfortunately, one of the chains that made up a swing was disconnected and dragging the ground, and there was a small pile of broken glass at the bottom of the slide. Directly under the swing was a sleeping bag which clearly had an occupant whose snoring could be heard from quite a distance. Baker wondered to himself why the guy slept there, rather than in one of the 3 tents right nearby. There was trash everywhere, and what was worse was the strong odour of pot and a strange chemical smell, all combined with the heavy odour of human feces. The man on the bike laid it against 2 others, all sharing the same coat of paint, and quickly passed all but one of the beers into a tent whose occupants couldn't be seen, but out of which came a hand holding what looked like a small sandwich bag. Bristol couldn't tell what was in the bag, but the guy with the ball cap quickly shoved it into one of the pockets on his shorts while keeping a sharp eye on the cop. "Brian, what are you all doing in this nice lady's backyard?" asked the officer. "Wait, you know this guy?" asked Bristol, beginning to dread that she might somehow be actually making things worse simply by wondering if it was even possible to get any worse. Looking around herself in desperation for something to hold on to, she noticed that her neighbours had begun to walk into her yard behind her. After all, there was no longer an intact gate to signify that this was a private space. "Bristol, you really need to invest in a porta potty back here. That would really help a lot with the obvious smell problem you have," Mr. Tussing suggested cheerfully. Officer Baker went on to explain to Bristol how that because of an injunction filed by a court in California, the laws had changed, and he was only able to warn these folks to leave in 72 hours. "Cruel and unusual, they call it," said Baker. He then told her that while he did recognize the urban campers, that until they did a major crime, he could only cite them and tell them to move on. He also asked Bristol if she had a receipt for Blake's bike that also had the serial number on it. What? Who keeps that stuff? Of course I don't have it. It was a gift to my son from his grandfather, she replied. Well, he claims he didn't steal it, and by your own admission, it is a different color than your son's. You aren't going to arrest these people? She could feel herself beginning to unhinge. We can recommend the Gospel Rescue Mission, Baker replied. I told you before, Baker, I ain't going there. They want to make me quit smoking, and I ain't gonna, Brian shouted, taking a defiantly long drag from his freshly lit cigarette while lifting up his beer in salute. And besides, Mrs. Tussing chimed in, they force people to attend Bible studies. Not very Christian if you ask me. The neighbours all glanced at each other with a knowing look that said, tisk, tisk. Maybe we can have the city pay for a non-Christian shelter, suggested Valerie. After all, there isn't much of a free market for these people to choose from. But I just want them out of my yard, screamed Bristol, now in a full rage. I don't care where they go. Take them to jail. Take them to the mission. Just get them out of the yard that I've worked so hard to build and afford. I can't let my kids play here. I won't be able to feel safe in my own home. Damn it! Just get them out. One of the neighbours leans in and whispers, Yep, that's exactly how you'd expect a Nazi to respond. Just listen to the vulgarity. What would Jesus do?